have the ability to harness that light in a particular way. We have the ability to kind of reflect that light. And so the first point is light requires a source, and we know the source here. It's in Genesis 1, God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then God saw that the light was good. Hello and welcome to HD Philosophy, the channel where we take some time with the classics to awaken the hidden dragon within all of you. And this is episode 8 of the Gospel Meditations, where we meditate on this week's gospel message from my family's Sunday Sabbath. So sit back and relax and enjoy the ranked match as we meditate on John 8, 12 through 16.
Let's go!
When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The Pharisees challenged him. Here you are, appearing as your own witness. Your own testimony is not valid. And Jesus answered, even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid. For I know where I come from and where I am going. But you have no idea where I come from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. But if I do judge, my decisions are true, because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. In your own law it is written that the testimony of 2 witnesses is true. I am the one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me. Now, what's fascinating about this gospel message is there's a lot of I am the way and the light. It's like I am the source of the light in your folks' world. Even if you don't know it, that light is there. And there's also this concept of judgment as well, because Christianity often gets this reputation as not being judgmental. Everybody quotes the he who is without sin cast the first stone, but they always forget the end of the line where Jesus looks at the woman and says, now go forward and sin no longer. I just so happened to be reading a book, An Introduction to Biblical Ethics by McQuilkin. And last night, I finished the section on love and forgiveness. And what's fascinating about forgiveness is there's always this debt that needs to be paid. When you forgive something, it's almost like you're paying the debt in that forgiveness. But there is this concept of reconciliation, though. Like, I can forgive somebody because I don't want to hold on to this hate or anger any longer, And we are called to forgive, not lord it over them, but rather truly forgive the individual. And I always found this idea of forgiveness really fascinating, but I'll stay on target here. On page 55, it talks about reconciliation, where it says, reconciliation is always the ideal to pursue as it exemplifies the gracious activity of God. And they cite Romans 5, 10 through 11 for this. And it is the goal of the disciple, of which they cite Matthew 5, 9 and 24. However, given the damage brought about by humanity's fall, reconciliation may not be possible even if forgiveness is genuinely given. A wife whose husband has repeatedly committed adultery may truly forgive him, but it does not entail being reconciled to him. The marriage covenant may have been so profoundly violated that restoring even a minimal effort of trust becomes impossible. So you see here, there is a standard. There is something that is needed. First of all, repentance is needed. Without repentance, you cannot demand forgiveness from the individual. But even if they do forgive you, that doesn't mean everything will be reconciled. The act still happened. And as you folks know, I often talk about this. I was very temperamental in my youth. And thank God there is this forgiveness, because I have made many mistakes in my life. And I am often baffled on how many people forgive me and how I've been reconciled within my relationships that I have in my life. And now I try to take that forward with that grace, the fact that so many people have forgiven me. I try to take that forward into the relationships where people have backstabbed me. And it's like, I'll forgive them, but must I always reconcile them? there may be a point of no return where the relationship cannot be mended. And that is something they talk about in the introduction to biblical ethics. But another aspect of John 8:12 is where Jesus talks about being the light again. And this is something I really want to focus on for the majority of this discussion. This concept of light that exists in the Bible. We see the light as a guiding principle. When Moses and his people finally fled the Pharaoh, the Lord went ahead and tell them that you'll follow the pillar of smoke by day, and then you'll follow the fire, a pillar of fire by night. And there's a lot of symbolism in this journey because these people were once slave to Pharaoh, and now upon their liberation, they're in this desert of opportunities, and yet God is there as a guiding light, the necessary guiding light to the promised land. We see this symbolism often in Jesus as well. We are in the darkness of sin. The only place that we can find justification before Jesus was in the churches that were erected. That's where God exists. And this is something Pastor Sheldon talked about, this Sunday. They had the tabernacle. They had the churches that were erected in the deserts. And you had to go there because that's where God existed. But when Jesus died on the cross, the shroud had split. As Pastor Sheldon said in this Sunday sermon, we became the church. God became available to all of us. So much like Moses and his people escaped kind of the tyranny of oppression, here we are escaping the tyranny of sin as Jesus being the light. I mean, think about it. When Jesus was born, the kings found him because of the Star of Bethlehem. The shining light in the sky, again, light in the darkness, here again, led them to the Messiah, But what are these characteristics of light? Because it's absolutely so beautiful. It's something I see in philosophy all the time with Plato's Cave, but I'm gonna use more of my Eastern philosophy to kind of make this point. What's fascinating about light is that light requires a source. There is a source of which all the rays protrude from. But the light that shines from that source is effortless. This source is the energy. And so the light rays are kind of epiphenomenal from that light source. And then we have the ability to harness that light in a particular way. We have the ability to kind of reflect that light. And so the first point is light requires a source, and we know the source here. It's in Genesis 1, God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. What's fascinating about this is here we have again, as Jesus says, I'm the way, and the Lord creates the light out of the darkness. It's like the light in our world has a source. We are not the source of it. We are not called upon to create that light. No, we are called upon to harness it and shine it forward because God is the source and Jesus is the source here on earth that represents that light. There's also this concept of this effortlessness to it, And for this, I'm reminded of the Taoist conception of effortless action that they call Wu Wei, There's a fluidity and efficiency that comes with certain kinds of actions. Aquinas once said the three characteristics of beauty were there's an integrity to the shape itself. There was a harmony in the action. He called that consonantia. And there's a radiance, there's a clarity that comes forth, So when something is beautiful, it kind of has these three aspects. I often think of like Glenn Rice when he would pull up for a three-point shot. Glenn Rice was my favorite NBA player throughout my entire childhood, from the Heat to Charlotte and into LA. Now, what I loved about Glenn Rice is when he would pull up for a three-pointer and he would shoot the ball, it just looked beautiful. It looked effortless. It was like, that's what it needs to look like right there. Bishop Barron talks about this when he says he looks at like a golf swing, and how effortless and beautiful and how everything moves as one, There's There's no rigidity in it. It just looks fluid. And that's the kind of effortless action I think is being displayed here. Because imagine the amount of training it took for Glenn Rice to be able to shoot three-pointers like that. We all can see the amount of training it takes in an effortless golf swing, you know? And that training is what's fascinating about this concept of light shining forward, you know? For Taoism, there was this concept of the mirror, like your soul as a mirror. Life stains your mirror. And so the effort, much like the effort that Glenn Rice puts into his three-pointers and that pros put into their golf swing, the effort is cleaning that mirror. There's an effort that is needed to work to remove the stains of that mirror, so that way the light shines off that mirror effortlessly to everyone else. I'm thinking of that scene in The Mummy where Brendan Fraser shoots one of the mirrors and then it lines up and illuminates the entire room. That's what we're called to do as Christians, because the more that we shine the light from the source of God, the brighter things become. You know, and that's why we're so lucky to live in a Christian population here, because we see that light shining from everyone else, and that's why we're called to be that light, because the more the light shines in every individual around us, the brighter the world becomes, you know? So there is this kind of darkness that's defined as its removal from the light. Like, the farther away from that light source you become, the more darkness you are entrenched in. And think about how people explain that darkness, explain that sin. It's always chaotic. They're lost. They're in turmoil. They have no direction. And then yet, look at how people describe it like when they find God. They now have a heading. They're grounded. They understand their footsteps now. It's the same thing with Moses and his people in the desert. The desert is legitimately a metaphor for endless possibilities. When you have endless possibilities, you have no direction. So this light and this fire at night in the darkness allows people to have confidence in every step that they make. They're finally grounded. And again, this is not just hyperbole. This is something we are called to do as Christians. Because in Matthew 5:14, it states, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand. It gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Be the way. Shine that light forward. But also understand that you are not the source. We're not called upon to create our own lights. We are called upon to shine what is good and what has been made good forward to make everybody else's life that much brighter.
Now these are some fighters who know their stuff.
Thank you for watching HD Philosophy. Like, share, and subscribe.